All right. Ian, we have a Patreon, don't we?
We do. You go to patreon.com/CU podcast, and what can you access there for a little bit of your valuable cheddar?
For quarters?
For quarters, don't put the quarters in your computer. You can get the full video podcast
In 16:9.
full video podcast. I do writings. We're gonna post one today. We're gonna write about D&D after we finish recording this. We do weekly hangouts. My hangout will be this week. Monthly hangouts. We do monthly hangouts.
Hey.
My hangout will be this week.
We can add that tier if you want it weekly.
Sunday at 10. I will be doing my hangout this week. And we also have poll topics that you can vote in for us to discuss.
This week we have two. In second place at 24%. Will popular pandemic games like Among Us, Phasmophobia, Fall Guys, etc. have staying power? I wrote it stating power by accident. Stating power. Yes, they can state it. And in first place at 76%. Does buying modern physical games matter anymore? On the heels of our limited run Scott Pilgrim topic, it sort of makes sense.
So limited run, buy physical, except for honestly, I don't. This is a great question for me because I've been kind of talking about this for a few years. Buy physical if you want physical, but don't buy physical necessarily if you think you're going to be preserving anything or avoiding a future where you won't be able to play a game anymore. Modern games are so full of updates and patches after they come out that what you have on the cartridge is, a cartridge or a disc, is oftentimes going to be an incredibly buggy and unplayable mess, or in some instances it's just not going to be playable whatsoever. This is especially thinking of certain examples. I remember buying Doom on the PlayStation 4 and popping it in and immediately having, I think it was like a 35 gig down patch that needed to download.
Patch.
I'm not right. How much of the game is it replacing? I'm sure I could have run it without downloading the patch, but it would have been full of bugs. More to the point, Doom on the same Doom for Switch, you can buy a physical copy of it, but I learned real quick that a lot of these games, that especially ones that are on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One and get ported over, when you buy it physically, it's literally just so you can have a trinket to hold in your hand and say, look, I have a physical copy of this.
Sure.
You need to have a certain amount of space. It only has part of the game on the cartridge. It downloads the other part of the game once you pop the cartridge in. So it's not even really truly a fully functioning game on the cartridge. It's literally just so you can say, I bought it physical.
Yeah.
And it's fun if you want to have stuff on your shelf. Like, I understand wanting to have collections.
And it's something you can resell.
Yes, you can resell it. I have, largely transferred over to digital games on systems like the PlayStation 4, but I still buy a solid amount of my games as physical releases on the Switch. I like to collect some physical games. I like to have physical games for my portables. Like Pat says, you can always resell your physical stuff after the fact, which is nice. But there are certainly releases on that system that I've avoided because I realized having a physical release wouldn't matter. The Bayonetta 2 pack, the Bayonetta 1 and 2 package for the Switch, I think it's just Bayonetta 2 is on the cartridge. You have to download Bayonetta 1 and you have to use a code to do it. So when you resell that, you're only buying half the package again. Ugh. At that point, I don't want the physical copy. What's the benefit of the physical copy other than it's taking up space?
It's a trinket.
Right, it's a trinket. They did that with Bayonetta. They did that with one of the Mega Man collections. I think it was the Mega Man X collection, where only half of it is on the cartridge, and the other half you have to download. So, obviously, if people like buying physical goods for the resellability, you can. But I just don't want people to think that they're necessarily avoiding a Scott Pilgrim type future by buying something physically now. There's no...
Unless, like this Scott Pilgrim re-release, it's all on that physical media. You don't need a fucking server to be on to play it.
Yeah.
That's it.
And so that's where that would be my final statement on it, is look at it on a game-by-game basis.
Yeah.
Something like Scott Pilgrim, a lot of these releases that Limited Run does, these games that have been out for a while, they usually, come out months to a couple of years, depending on the time frame, after the original release comes out. They get a window to receive major updates and patches before they put them on cartridge.
Yeah.
So that what you get from a limited run release, and a lot of other companies do this too, is going to be as close as possible to a final build.
It's like the stuff they used to do in the 90s for like once, like a Warcraft thing. It's like, oh, we do the separate DLC. Now we'll do like the
gold.
The edition has everything in there, so you're set. It's that version of that, but now for DLC that this is it. We're not doing any more new shit for this game. This is it. And this is the version, the ultimate edition.
So Scott Pilgrim came out ages ago, years ago, was released on, the last generation of systems. It got its bug updates. People played through it. It was tested. Things were patched. DLC was released. Now they can gather all of that together into one bundle and release it. And you don't really have to worry about it. Yes, you can pop that cartridge in today or 10 years from now and still play it, and everything is going to be fine.
Because it's installed and run on that physical media. There's no server to connect to.
Right.
That's what it comes down to. Will you need a server to connect to? Yes or no? That's the question you have to ask yourself when you play this game. Is there a server you have to connect to in any way to validate it or to download shit to install it? Yes or no? And that's going to be hard to know. Most regular people won't realize that. Oh, I even have to connect just to, make an account that you need to play a part of the game. Or maybe some games will be single player will be fine, but multiplayer will be gone, or this part of the game will be gone. So it's going to get really, really more and more dicey as we go when it comes to this stuff, unless they have allowances for servers you can connect to privately that can run this shit, which that's still a weird issue that they're trying to work out.
And depending on the game, a lot of these games I've got two examples from Nintendo where these releases come out and the game at the end is wildly different looking than the game that was released. Not only just in terms of bugs and patches and things like that, but in terms of free content updates.
Yeah.
Look at something like Animal Crossing, which, and I think they partially did this so people couldn't, mine the data and find everything that was in there. But what was actually on the Animal Crossing cartridge is a shell of what is actually available to do in Animal Crossing now. They released new updates with every holiday that you had to download that would, bring the holiday activities into the game so that people couldn't, get the game on day one and be like, this is everything you can do in it. Something like Mario Tennis. I have a physical copy of Mario Tennis. That game has been balanced to hell and back. So not only will the characters actually play different on the cartridge if I were to just take that cartridge, throw it into another Switch and load it up without doing an update, not only would it play horribly different, it would have half as many characters because they released, I think it was something like 12 free playable characters for that game over the course of a year.
Wow.
So if you're used to playing it now on your Switch and then say Armageddon hits, the networks go down, nothing, you lose your Switch, but you find a new Switch and you go and you pop your copy of Mario Tennis.
I'm picturing Ian in the Twilight Zone episode where he gets caught in a bank vault playing his Switch and the rest of the world dies.
Yeah, and all of a sudden you're looking at a game that has half as much stuff. It's just, so they're not even if they are going to be playable, there's a lot of games that aren't going to resemble the game that everyone remembers once you strip away all the additions and things that had to be downloaded and added. So pick and choose. And like I said, I get it if you want to buy physical media, but a lot of it is just it's just fucking psychology. It soothes your brain. Yes, you own this now. You don't fucking own it.
Well, remember, it's a license. You're buying a license. It's a license to play the game. They don't care how you play that game, whether it's on the physical media itself, like back in the NES game, or it's a license to connect to a server to download it. And you're also buying and reselling the license to that. That's what it legally it is. It's not, you don't own the content of the game. It's a license to play that game in some form. But then when that runs out, then the legality thing comes in though too. I wonder, that might be a court case eventually, I think, for something like that. I bought the license to play this game. Does that mean the company is supposed to enable you to play that game forever? Or is there a certain time limit? Is there a statute of limitations? What does that agreement look like? Should there be a time limit? Or we shut the servers off 3 years later and then you're fucked? Like what is that'd be funny that made it to the Supreme Court. You have justice be like, what's going on with this video? but seriously, those are questions that are becoming more and more common. Or we don't care and just rebuy the same game generation after generation, which is kind of what's been happening anyway when it comes to some of these. It's like, who cares? But that's not. Then your license runs out to play that game, and that should be upfront. You're basically getting a lease that runs out on that game license, if that makes sense. So it comes down to buyer beware. Know what you're buying. If you're buying something from like Limited Run, that's a new game you're probably safe. You can play that game forever in that form, but obviously not. I mean, God, if you buy a PS5 game at this point, what are you actually buying? What are you buying on that disc? What are you actually buying? A connection to a server. That's what you're buying.
A key check that says, okay, download the rest of the game to the system.
Like early 2000s PC games, you're literally, you're getting a CD, but you're buying really little serial to input to install it.
Yeah, the paper is what's important.
Yeah, that's what it is. Well, that's kind of depressing.
Yep.